Welcome back, everybody. A few months ago I bought these sockets at a local estate auction. They were in much worse condition than I had hoped, and I said I would do a video on my cleanup process on these impacts. I picked out 4 of the worst ones. I think they're all snap-on. Some of these are so crusty it's hard to tell. So I'm going to do these 4 and see how they come out. Okay, so these are the 5 sockets I'm going to show you being cleaned up in this video. So some of these are pretty nasty. When I'm done, they should look pretty much like new, except for where the heaviest pitting is. That will clean off, but it's going to leave the pit marks behind it. So I have a couple machines that are going to do the work for me. When you clean up a lot of stuff, time is a key. So really, they're only going to take me a couple minutes each. This one's really bad. I can't even see what size it is. So, here we go. So some of you may have guessed I was going to use a Vaporust, which is true. I'm also going to use an ultrasonic cleaner, which you may have guessed as well. Now there's many different ways to clean these sockets up. I do think my results will be as good as it gets. I guess we're about to find out. Now I realize not everybody's going to have the tools I'm going to use today. I will leave links in the description to everything I use. The full setup I use is about $250. I do clean a lot of tools. It saves me a ton of time. You may not be in that same position. You may just be doing a handful at once, so you may not need certain tools. I've got water that's preheating in the ultrasonic cleaner. I'm going to use a smaller container for the sockets, so I'm not using much of Vaporust. So I'm just going to fill it so it covers the sockets. What I like about this particular machine is that it goes up to 80 degrees Celsius. I think that comes out to about 175 degrees. That's much hotter than I need it to be, so I'm actually going to turn it down a bit. The reason why I like it hot is because I've tricked myself into believing that the Vaporust works better when it's hot. I think it also works better in an ultrasonic cleaner. I'm going to weight down the top of it because I don't want it to start bobbing up and down in there. I'm going to have it run for 30 minutes. In that 30 minutes, I would say 85% of that corrosion is going to be gone in 30 minutes. And I don't think a Vaporust works that fast if you just poured it in a dish and walked away for 30 minutes. So I do think this speeds up the process. Okay, first half hour's out of the way. Let's take a look, see what's going on in here. Pretty much like I expected. The parts that were a little rusty have pretty much come clean, but the areas with the heavier corrosion are still there. Using this little pocket pry bar just to scrape the surface a little bit, kind of get the bigger chunks off. So I'm going to throw this one back in here. I'm actually going to run it now for another hour. Alright, we just finished running our 3rd cycle. So it's been through the ultrasonic for an hour and a half. They're actually hot enough right now that they'll dry off on their own. So this one was really bad, but right now it looks pretty good. This one had a lot of pitting right in this area. You can see that the rust is gone, but it's still pitted. So that one's not going to come out great, but it'll be a lot better than it was. So phase 1 is done, and we're going to move to the next step. Next up is the vibrating tumbler. This is just your basic one from Harbor Freight. I do buy the 2-year warranty when I buy something like this because I know I'm going to use it a lot. But the secret's what's inside. When you buy one of these from Harbor Freight, they also sell the media. I think it's some sort of resin based or ceramic based. Those are garbage. The reason why they're garbage is because if you look at sockets like these that were put into the tumbler, all that resin stuff breaks down into powder, and that just cakes into all the little crevices. Now, although it does make it easy to read the socket, it gets in every little nook and cranny. It gets inside the little hole there, and it gets in the open end, and it gets into the female end, and it's a pain to get out. It's really tough to remove it if you don't want it there. This is stainless steel shot. I will leave a link if I can. I'm not sure this style is still available. There are other types available. This stuff's expensive. The stuff that you buy at Harbor Freight that breaks down is about $4 a pound, depending on which one you buy. If I remember right, this one's about $10 a pound. So I did pay about $100 for the media in here, but it does not break down. It does a hell of a job taking off rust. It does a great job polishing, and it's probably going to last me forever. So if you buy the stuff that breaks down, you have to keep buying it. Well, I will likely never have to buy media for this again. So I'm going to set the sockets about halfway in. I mean, you could bury them. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to put a little bit of 3-in-1 oil in there just to give it a little extra lubrication. Doesn't really need it, but Can't hurt, right? Now, in order to keep the cover tight, I don't just keep cranking on the wing nut. I actually push down the cover and then tighten it. That way I don't strip out this bolt. I'm going to let this run a couple hours, and by the time they get done, they should look pretty good. Alright, it's been in here about 2 hours. It should be looking pretty good by now. I will be doing a little side-by-side photo at the end of the video so you can kind of remember what they looked like before compared to what they look like now. So when we started, this one had a lot of corrosion. It wasn't maybe as pitted as the other ones, but as you can see now, it's basically like new condition. There is one more step I'm going to do, and that's going to be to wax these, and that way they are preserved. And when I'm done with that, we'll get a better close-up of the results. So my go-to for protecting any sort of bare metal surfaces is a Renaissance wax. I use it on my table saw, bandsaw, drill press, and stuff like impact sockets. It's not cheap, but it works great, and a little goes a long way. This won't change the appearance of the socket, but it will give it some protection against rusting again. So we'll go ahead and look at these side by side compared to what they looked like before. So in order to get a before on this big adapter, I'm probably going to have to show some video because I don't actually have a photo, I don't believe. But if you recall, this one was really nasty, and now I can't even tell it was rusty. As far as the areas where it was really pitted before, obviously there's some pitting left over. I couldn't even read the size on this one before. I can see now that it's 11/16. The pitting's still there. There's nothing you can do about that. But the rest of it cleaned up really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place these exactly as they were before in the photo, and then I'll do a side-by-side comparison with the photos. I will also have a side-by-side photo at the end of the video. As you can see, this is obviously the before picture. I did pick out what I thought were the worst ones in the box, especially the swivels. The pitting was obviously going to be really heavy under the spots that look very corroded. I knew that there would be heavy pitting under those spots, but even though they don't look the best, they're still going to work fine and have a lot of years left in their life. As we transition over to the finished version, you'll see that everything really came out nice. Outside of the heavy pitting, of course, the second from the left and the far right look like they were never even rusty. Most of the sockets in the box will come out looking like those two, just because the rest of the sockets really are not that bad a condition. Mostly it's just surface rust, heavy scaling, but not just that deep corrosion like the two swivels. And the rest of the swivels are not nearly as bad as these two. I really only have a few minutes in each one to get it to this point because I'm letting the Ultrasonic and the tumbler do the work. I clean a lot of tools, so having those two machines are definitely worth it. That's going to be all for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.